The small, dimly lit apartment smelled faintly of old wood and worn-out furniture. A single lamp in the corner flickered slightly, casting an orange hue across the room. Emily Carter sat at the kitchen table, her tired eyes scanning the pile of bills in front of her. Her hands trembled slightly as she sifted through them, pushing the overdue electricity bill aside to make space for the next one. It felt like an endless cycle. Every paycheck barely covered the most essential expenses, and there was never enough left over for anything else. The weight of it all seemed to grow heavier with every passing day. "Mom, can I have a snack?" Lily's voice interrupted the silence, soft but full of youthful energy. Emily's gaze shifted toward her 8-year-old daughter, standing in the doorway with her wide, hopeful eyes. She wore a pink nightgown that was a little too small, the hem worn down from months of wear. Emily forced a smile, trying to push the worry out of her voice. "Of course, sweetie. What do you want?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Lily would want something sweet, something that made her forget the fact that they barely had enough to get by. Lily thought for a moment, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her nightgown. "Can I have some cookies?" Emily stood up, walking to the cupboard, which was nearly bare except for a few boxes of cheap cereal and a few cans of soup. She didn't want to disappoint Lily, so she reached for the last half-empty box of cookies. She opened it and pulled out the few remaining cookies, trying to make it seem like a treat, even though it was a stretch. "Here you go," Emily said softly, placing the cookies on a small plate for her daughter. Lily's eyes lit up, but Emily saw the hesitation there. Her daughter knew. She knew they didn't have much, but she didn't understand the full weight of it yet. She didn't know how hard it was for her mother to keep it all together. "Thanks, Mom," Lily said, her voice full of innocence, and Emily's heart ached with love and guilt. Emily sat back down at the kitchen table, her head resting in her hands for a moment. The weight of the world seemed to settle on her shoulders. How much longer could she keep this up? How many more late nights would she have to spend working just to make sure Lily had a roof over her head and food to eat? Her eyes drifted over the stack of bills again. They didn't look any different, yet they weighed more than she could handle. She heard the sound of Lily's soft humming, and for a moment Emily closed her eyes, trying to block out the pressure of the world around her. The gentle sound of her daughter, the warmth of her small presence, was the only thing keeping Emily from breaking down. After a long pause, Lily climbed into the chair beside Emily, looking up at her with wide eyes. "Mom, will we ever be able to go on a vacation like the people in the movies?" Emily looked down at her daughter, her heart sinking. "One day, sweetheart. One day," she whispered, though even as she said it, she wasn't sure when. It felt like a distant dream, one that was so far out of reach that it barely seemed possible anymore. "Really?" Lily asked, her face lighting up with a glimmer of hope. "Really," Emily promised, brushing a stray lock of hair from her daughter's forehead. "Things will get better, I promise." Lily smiled, her small hand reaching out to grasp her mother's. "I know you'll make it happen, Mom." But as Emily looked down at her daughter, her smile faltering for just a moment, she felt the deep ache of uncertainty. Was she doing enough? Was she going to be able to keep her promise? How could she when every day felt like an uphill battle? "I love you, Lily," Emily said quietly, the words carrying more weight than usual. "I love you too, Mom," Lily replied, her voice soft but steady, as though she too felt the weight of the world, yet trusted that everything would be okay. As the evening dragged on, Emily tucked Lily into bed, the sound of her daughter's breathing soon filling the room. But Emily couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to think of ways to make things better. The bills, the overdue rent, the rising costs, it all felt impossible. But no matter how tired she was, she couldn't give up. For Lily, she would keep fighting. "One day, sweetie," Emily whispered into the quiet of the room, her voice full of determination. "One day, things will get better." She didn't know how or when, but she had to believe that it was possible. And with that, Emily drifted into an uneasy sleep, clutching her daughter's promise in her heart. The bell above the door jingled as Emily stepped into the small gas station convenience store. The cold air hit her like a slap in the face, and she quickly shivered as she made her way toward the shelves. It had been another long day, and she hadn't had the chance to grab much more than a few hours of sleep. The last thing she wanted was to stand in line at a crowded grocery store, so the gas station had become her go-to stop for whatever she could afford. Lily was staying with her grandmother tonight, giving Emily a few hours to herself. She knew she should have been working, but the extra shifts weren't always available, and sometimes she just needed a break, a small treat for herself, even if it was just a snack. The aisles were dimly lit and the shelves packed with a mix of chips, candy, and soda. Emily wandered slowly, her eyes scanning for something she could bring back for Lily. She didn't want to disappoint her little girl with another night of boring cereal for dinner. She reached for a bag of chips, hesitating for a moment. She could stretch that, maybe get a soda too. The thought of feeding her daughter something that tasted better than the usual pasta and cheese made her feel a small sense of relief. Emily grabbed the items and headed toward the counter. The cashier, a young man in his 20s, was busy texting on his phone, only half aware of her presence. But before she could reach the register, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned, startled, and found an older man standing behind her. His clothes were worn and his hair was graying, but his face held an expression that was both kind and slightly weathered, as though life had been hard on him, but he'd kept his heart intact. "Excuse me," the old man said, his voice gentle but firm. "I couldn't help but notice you there, counting your change." Emily froze, feeling a flush of embarrassment. She was always conscious of how little she had, especially when it came to small purchases like this. But the man didn't seem judgmental. Instead, his eyes twinkled as if he were offering her a secret only they shared. "Yeah, just making sure I have enough," Emily said, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. "It's been a tough month, you know." The old man smiled, his face creasing with lines of experience. "I can see that. It's never easy, but sometimes luck finds those who need it most." Before Emily could respond, the man pulled out a crumpled lottery ticket from his pocket and placed it gently on the counter next to her chips and soda. "You know," he continued, his voice warm, "I was just about to get a ticket myself and I saw you standing there. I'll take care of it." He gestured to the ticket. "You deserve a little good luck." Emily blinked in confusion. "Wait, what?" "I don't—" The man interrupted her, shaking his head. "No need to argue. I'm just doing what I can to make the world a little better. Sometimes it's the small things that count." Emily looked down at the ticket, her heart racing. She wasn't sure how to respond, but there was something about this stranger that made her want to trust him. He wasn't asking for anything in return, and she could see the kindness in his eyes. She had heard of people buying lottery tickets for others, but never in her wildest dreams had she expected something like this. I can't accept this," Emily stammered, reaching for her wallet. "I don't even know you. This is too much." The man chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It's not about me, it's about you. You deserve a bit of luck, especially when life feels like it's pushing you down." She hesitated, her hand frozen in the air, but then she saw the sincerity in his face. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, thank you." The man smiled once more and patted her on the shoulder. "Take care of yourself and remember, sometimes miracles happen when you least expect them." With that, he turned and shuffled out the door without another word. Emily stood there for a moment, her mind spinning. She stared at the ticket, then at the cashier who had been watching the exchange from behind the register, his eyes wide in disbelief. "Wow," the cashier said, breaking the silence. That's really something. I've seen that guy around a couple of times. Always does things like that. Never asks for anything in return." "Who is he?" Emily asked, still in a daze. The cashier shrugged. "No one really knows. He's just a regular. Comes in, buys a few things, helps people out when he can, but he never sticks around long enough for anyone to get to know him." "Strange," Emily said, half to herself. "Feels like he's an angel or something." The cashier gave a small chuckle. "Maybe he is." Still stunned by the encounter, Emily took the ticket, tucking it into her purse as she paid for her snacks. She couldn't help but feel a strange sense of gratitude. Maybe this was just a kind gesture from a stranger, or maybe, just maybe, there was something more to it. As Emily stepped back into the cool night air, the lottery ticket weighing lightly in her pocket, she found herself wondering if the man's words were true. Sometimes luck did find those who needed it most. The next morning came too quickly for Emily. The sky outside her window was still dark, a faint streak of morning light beginning to creep through the edges of the curtains. She'd barely gotten any sleep, having stayed up late sorting bills and figuring out how to make it through another week. But the moment she opened her eyes, a soft voice broke through her haze of exhaustion. "Mommy, I want to scratch the ticket." Lily's excited voice rang out from the kitchen table. Emily groaned softly but smiled as she rubbed her eyes. She had completely forgotten about the lottery ticket the old man had bought her, and now she couldn't help but feel a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "All right, sweetheart," Emily said, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "Go ahead, just don't get too excited." Lily's small hands scrambled to grab the ticket from the counter where Emily had left it the night before. The 8-year-old's eyes were wide with anticipation, her little face already breaking into a grin. She sat down at the table, scratching the ticket with her fingers, then quickly grabbing the coin Emily had left beside her purse. "I'm doing it, Mommy, I'm scratching it," Lily said, her voice filled with energy. Emily sat down across from her, trying to stifle a yawn, watching her daughter's movements. Lily scratched furiously at the numbers, her small fingers working quickly, but her face remained focused. The whole thing seemed so innocent, like any other moment in their routine. Emily wasn't thinking about the ticket at all. She was still lost in the haze of her thoughts from the night before. Lily paused for a moment, her tiny hand frozen mid-scratch. "Wait, Mom," she whispered, her eyes wide. Emily looked up at her daughter, her grogginess fading as she caught sight of the ticket. "What is it, honey?" she asked, trying to hide the growing sense of dread in her chest. Lily turned the ticket toward her, her little hands trembling with excitement. Emily blinked, her vision clearing as she saw the numbers in front of her. It took a moment for the reality to set in. "Mom, I think we won," Lily whispered in awe, her voice barely above a breath. Emily's heart stopped. Her hands went cold, and for a second the room around her felt too big. Her eyes darted from Lily's face to the ticket, back to Lily's face again. She squinted, rubbing her eyes as if it would help her see more clearly. Lily was staring at the ticket, her face a mixture of excitement and confusion. The numbers on the scratch-off were undeniably there. It couldn't be. There was no way. Emily slowly reached for the ticket, her hand trembling. She squinted at it again, double-checking each number, her fingers tracing the digits, making sure she wasn't imagining it. Then she saw it. The giant $1 million printed across the top of the ticket. She blinked rapidly as if she might be dreaming. "No, no way." Her voice was barely a whisper, the words feeling foreign on her lips. Lily bounced in her seat, her face glowing with excitement. "Mommy, we won! We really won!" Emily's head spun. Her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, none of them making sense. She looked down at the ticket again, and then she looked at Lily, who was practically vibrating with excitement. The sound of her daughter's voice faded, replaced by the frantic beat of her heart. "Wait, this can't be real," Emily said, her voice shaky. But there it was, in black and white. The words were clear. The numbers matched. She could hardly breathe. She felt the world around her tilt as if the floor was giving way beneath her feet. This was a dream. This wasn't real. Lily reached across the table, her small hand resting on Emily's. "Mom, I told you we'd be okay. I knew it. I knew it would happen." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, blurring her vision. She wiped them away quickly, but her hands were shaking uncontrollably now. She didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or shout in disbelief. All of it felt so overwhelming, so surreal. It's real, Mom. Look at it," Lily said, her voice full of wonder. She pulled the ticket closer to her mother's face like it was the most precious thing in the world, and to them it felt like it was. Emily stood up abruptly, almost knocking the chair over as she did. She needed to think, to process. She grabbed her phone from the counter and dialed the lottery hotline in a daze, her hands fumbling with the numbers. The phone rang a couple of times before someone picked up. "Congratulations on your winning ticket, ma'am. How can I assist you today?" Emily could barely speak, her voice barely above a whisper. I I think I won. I have a ticket. It's it's for $1 million." The voice on the other end of the line was calm and professional, but the words hit Emily like a tidal wave. "Please read me the ticket number, ma'am, and I'll verify the win for you." Her hands shook as she gave the number, trying to hold the phone steady. After a long pause, the operator came back on the line. "Congratulations, ma'am. You have won $1 million. That's correct. You are the winner." Emily's heart seemed to stop altogether. She couldn't breathe. She could hardly think. She felt Lily's hand grip hers, and she looked down at her daughter, who was beaming up at her, joy radiating from her little face. Emily's heart was a whirlwind of emotions: confusion, disbelief, joy. I I can't believe this," she whispered, her voice shaking. Lily smiled wider. "We did it, Mommy. We really did it." Emily slowly sank into a chair, still holding the ticket in her trembling hands. The world outside the kitchen window was still the same, but everything had changed. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she had missed something important. The lottery win was overwhelming, yes, but there was more to it. She had to find the man who had bought her the ticket, the mysterious stranger at the gas station. He had paid for that ticket, and something about his kindness had struck her deeply. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the gesture, the unexpected act of goodness that had changed her life in an instant. "Mom, where are we going?" Lily asked as she grabbed her coat, clearly still excited from the earlier revelation. "We're going to find someone, honey," Emily replied, her voice firm but uncertain. She wasn't entirely sure how she was going to find him, but she had to try. The gas station was only a short drive away. Emily's hands gripped the steering wheel, her mind racing. She could still picture the old man clearly in her mind: the weathered coat, the worn-out boots, the look in his eyes when he handed her the ticket. It was like he knew something she didn't. Emily needed answers. When they arrived, she parked near the entrance and hesitated for a moment before stepping out of the car. Lily bounced around her, still too excited to stay still for long. "Come on, Mommy, let's find him," Lily said eagerly, tugging at Emily's sleeve. "Hold on, sweetie," Emily said, trying to steady herself. She wasn't sure what she was expecting, but she had to start somewhere. She pushed open the door of the convenience store, the chime above the door ringing as they entered. The cashier behind the counter, a young man with a tired look on his face, glanced up from his phone as they approached. "Hi," Emily said, trying to steady her breath. "I'm looking for someone who was here yesterday. An older man, worn-out coat. He bought me a lottery ticket. Have you seen him?" The cashier narrowed his eyes, looking at Emily as though he were thinking. "Oh, yeah, I remember him. He comes in here every now and then. A quiet guy. Doesn't talk much." "Did he tell you his name?" Emily pressed, trying not to sound too desperate. The cashier shook his head. "Nope. Never says much, just comes in, does his thing, and leaves. He's usually around in the mornings, but he doesn't hang out long, you know?" Emily sighed, disappointment flooding her chest. She had hoped the cashier would remember something, anything, that could point her in the right direction. But there was nothing. "Do you know where he lives? Or where I can find him?" Emily asked, almost pleading. The cashier shook his head again. "Sorry, ma'am. He's a mystery to everyone who comes in here. He never talks about his life, just helps people when they need it. You might be able to catch him tomorrow morning, though. He comes by around the same time." Emily felt her heart drop. Tomorrow? That was too long. What if he was gone for good? What if she never saw him again? "Are you sure he's really like that? Always helping people?" Emily asked, her voice a little softer now. She wanted to believe in the goodness of the world, especially after what had just happened to her, but she couldn't help but feel a pang of doubt. The cashier looked up at her with a slight smile as if he understood her doubts. Yeah, you'd be surprised how much he's helped around here. People have said he paid for groceries, gave advice, even helped someone fix their car once. He just seems to show up when someone needs it. Is he, is he okay? Emily asked hesitantly. She didn't know why she was asking, but something in her gut told her that the man had a purpose, even if he wasn't fully aware of it himself. The cashier shrugged. I don't know, ma'am. He never asks for anything in return, just helps out and leaves. Emily took a deep breath and nodded, trying to process what the cashier had said. He wasn't offering her much, but it was more than nothing. Still, it wasn't enough. Thanks for your help, Emily said, forcing a smile. I'll check back tomorrow morning. The cashier nodded, and Emily turned to leave, Lily trailing behind her, her small hand clutching Emily's sleeve. As they reached the door, Lily stopped, tugging on her mother's arm. Mom, do you think he'll be here tomorrow? Emily smiled down at her daughter, trying to reassure her. I don't know, sweetie, but we'll keep looking, okay? Lily nodded, her wide eyes filled with faith. Maybe he's an angel, Mommy. Maybe he just shows up when people need him. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Was that it? Was the old man an angel? She couldn't dismiss the thought entirely. Maybe he was just someone sent to help them when they needed it most. Well, Emily said, looking down at the ticket still clutched in her hand, maybe he is, Lily. Maybe he is. As they walked out of the store, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she had just come across something extraordinary. The search wasn't over. It couldn't be. She had to find the man who had given them this second chance, the stranger who had changed everything. The sun was beginning to set as Emily and Lily walked to the nearby park, their steps slow and deliberate. Emily's mind raced with the events of the past few hours, the excitement of winning, the disappointment of not finding the man, and now the quiet stillness that seemed to settle over her. She glanced at Lily, who skipped along beside her, humming a tune, blissfully unaware of the emotional whirlwind her mother was going through. They reached a small bench overlooking a pond, its surface reflecting the fading light of the day. Emily sat down, taking a deep breath, trying to gather her thoughts. She pulled the crumpled lottery ticket from her pocket and stared at the numbers once again, as if expecting them to change, but they didn't. They were still the same. $1 million. She glanced at Lily, whose eyes were wide with wonder, her excitement not waning in the slightest. Lily had already started planning all the things they could do with the money. Mom, we can buy a big house, a new car. We can even go to Disney World. Emily smiled, but it was a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She hadn't yet allowed herself to truly believe it. The money, the win, it was so surreal. She didn't know how to process it, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized that it wasn't just about the money. Mom, do you think he knew? Lily's voice interrupted her thoughts. Emily looked down at her daughter, whose innocent question hung in the air. She frowned slightly, unsure of what Lily meant. Knew what, sweetie? Emily asked, her voice gentle. Do you think the man who gave us the ticket knew we needed it? Lily's eyes were wide with sincerity, her small face filled with quiet wisdom. Emily's heart skipped a beat. It was as if Lily had somehow understood the deeper meaning of the event in a way that Emily herself hadn't fully grasped yet. It wasn't just the money that had changed their lives. It was the act of kindness, the thoughtfulness of a stranger who saw their struggle and decided to do something about it. Emily felt a lump form in her throat. She didn't have the answers, but she had a sudden, overwhelming sense that this win wasn't just a stroke of luck. It was something more. It was a gift. Not just of money, but of hope. It was a reminder that there was still kindness in the world, and that sometimes people showed up when you least expected it. I think he did know, Lily, Emily said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I think he knew we needed it. Maybe not for the things we want, but for the things we need most. Lily nodded as though she understood completely. She sat next to her mother on the bench, her small hand resting on Emily's. The two of them sat in silence for a moment, watching the colors of the sunset blend into the darkening sky. As Emily looked at the ticket in her hand once more, she realized something profound. This wasn't just about her. It wasn't just about the money or the new house or the car. It was about giving back, about paying forward the kindness that had been shown to them. She thought about the other families she had seen struggling, single mothers like herself, people who worked hard every day but still found themselves in situations that felt impossible. She thought about the parents who couldn't afford to buy their children the little things that made life feel special. She thought about the people who needed a hand up, just like she had. "Lily, do you know what we're going to do with this money?" Emily asked, her voice filled with a new determination. Lily turned to her, her eyes bright with curiosity. "What, Mom?" "We're going to help other people. We're going to use this to make a difference, to help families who are struggling like we were," Emily said, her voice steady now. "We're going to pay it forward, just like the man did for us." Lily smiled, her face lighting up with excitement. "Like an angel?" Emily chuckled softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from Lily's face. "Maybe he was, sweetheart. Maybe he was." For the first time since the win, Emily felt a sense of peace wash over her. It wasn't about the wealth. It wasn't about changing their own lives. It was about giving back, about making sure that the kindness she had received didn't end with her. Emily stood up, holding out her hand to Lily. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go home. We have a lot of work to do." Lily took her hand, skipping beside her mother as they made their way back to the car. Emily looked down at the ticket once more, the numbers now seeming to glow with a new light. She wasn't just holding a ticket to a better life. She was holding the chance to make someone else's life better. And as they drove home, Emily couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, the mysterious old man had been right all along. Sometimes luck did find those who needed it most, and sometimes that luck was meant to be shared. The sound of children laughing echoed through the small charity center as Emily walked in, Lily holding her hand tightly. They had come to donate part of the winnings from the lottery, just a small part, but it was enough to make a difference for families in need. Emily had spent the past few months figuring out how she could make the most of her newfound fortune, and she had realized that helping others was the best way to honor the stranger's act of kindness. The charity center was bustling with activity. Volunteers moved around, handing out food, clothing, and supplies. Single parents like Emily sat in the waiting area chatting quietly among themselves. Some had young children in tow, others were alone, their faces drawn with the exhaustion of trying to keep up with the relentless demands of life. Emily and Lily approached the donation desk where a young woman with a warm smile greeted them. "Hello, how can I help you today?" the woman asked. Emily handed over the check, her heart swelling with pride. "We'd like to make a donation. It's not much, but we want to help other families who are in need." The woman's smile widened. "Thank you so much. Every little bit helps. Your kindness means a lot to us." Lily tugged at Emily's sleeve. "Mom, can we help with anything else?" Emily glanced down at her daughter, the determination in her eyes matching Emily's own. "Of course, sweetie, we're here to help however we can." Lily's face lit up as she began handing out food and toys to the other children in the waiting area. Emily watched her, a proud smile on her face. Her daughter had always been empathetic, but now, seeing her so eager to help others, Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had taught Lily the importance of kindness, and now Lily was living it in ways that Emily had only hoped for. As Emily turned to leave, she paused for a moment to look around the center. It was a place of hope, where people who had lost their way could find a little light, a little support. Emily had been one of those people not long ago, and now she was giving back in the best way she knew how. It felt like the right thing to do, like a promise she had made to herself, to Lily, and even to the mysterious stranger who had started this chain of kindness. Just as she turned to walk toward the door, a figure caught her eye in the distance. It was him, the old man. He was standing near the corner of the room, his weathered face illuminated by the soft light coming through the windows. He was watching Emily and Lily, his eyes filled with a knowing warmth. He didn't say a word, but there was something about the way he looked at them that spoke volumes. A silent understanding passed between them, one that needed no explanation. For a moment, Emily stood frozen, her breath catching in her throat. She wanted to run to him, to thank him, to ask him how he had known they needed the help. But before she could take a step, he turned and disappeared out the door, just as quietly as he had appeared. Emily rushed to the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She stepped outside into the cool air, scanning the street for any sign of him, but he was gone. She looked down at the check in her hand, then back at the spot where the old man had been standing. She realized something in that moment. He had come, not to be thanked or recognized, but to give her a gift. The gift wasn't just the lottery ticket. It was the reminder that there were good people in the world, that kindness could change lives, and that sometimes help came when you least expected it. As Emily walked back to her car, Lily skipping ahead, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had done something good, she had paid it forward, and somehow it felt like the world was a little bit brighter because of it. "Mom, do you think we'll ever see him again?" Lily asked, her voice filled with wonder. Emily smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand. "Maybe we will, sweetheart. But even if we don't, we know what we have to do now, don't we?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "We help people, just like he helped us." "That's right," Emily said, her voice soft but firm. "We keep paying it forward, one person at a time." As they drove away from the charity center, Emily couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of fulfillment. She had $1 million, yes, but more importantly, she had found a purpose. She had found a way to give back, to be part of something bigger than herself. And that, she realized, was worth more than all the money in the world. In the distance, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the city. Emily smiled to herself, knowing that in some small way the kindness of a stranger had changed their lives, and now they would continue to change the lives of others.